So now, why, in my opinion, has legacy Bitcoin Core and specifically version 30 Bitcoin Core fallen below the decentralization threshold? Several reasons. There's a bunch of reasons, but Bitcoin Core itself, its behavior, it really has told us that it's been influenced by a centralized group of VCs that have a centralized funding mechanism. If you follow the money, they are tied to a lot of the traditional fiat banking cartel system, right? So Bitcoin Core is now being overly influenced in a very centralized way via VC funding, right? And because it's centralized VC funding, they've hired a lot of new developers who aren't actually Bitcoiners. They're not plebs running nodes that are investing in Bitcoin and trying to build a circular economy. No, these are just developers who's their job, right? And therefore, when it's just their job, they're going to do what they're more or less told, or they're influenced to develop based on, certain projects get funded better than other projects, and you make more money by supporting certain things, and you don't make money if you don't support certain things, right? All right. So Bitcoin Core for years has refused to patch exploits, and there was one in particular. You can go into the rabbit hole, find this details elsewhere, but there's a couple they refused to patch SegWit and Taproot exploits because they claimed it was contentious. There shouldn't be anything contentious about patching unintended consequences, but it's because somebody else was influencing via the centralized VC funding, because there were people that had an interest in not patching because they were starting to build products, namely shitcoins and NFT derivatives, using these exploits. They did not want them to be patched. Therefore, Core used the excuse that it was contentious and therefore didn't patch. Right? That this should be a no nonsense. We should patch unexpected vulnerabilities. Period. End of story. Then they turned around after claiming it was contentious to patch exploits. They pushed through a very contentious exploit in an op return change that the op return change itself is one of the biggest single issues with all this, right? That single change is going to make the network more centralized over time. It's not going to kill it today or tomorrow, unless there's some type of illegal content put on the chain that governments then go crack down on the network and effectively kill it for large portions of the population. No government can kill Bitcoin entirely. It's too decentralized still today for that. But in your country where you live, it may be effectively worthless to you because you cannot use it or interact with it unless you want to get your door knocked in by some SWAT people and get taken off to jail, right? So I'm not saying that's going to happen in any particular country. I'm just saying the risk is that's the risk of killing it right away for you effectively in your local region. But over time, it will centralize Bitcoin just because when you're able to put that much excess data on the base blockchain, it is going to create a lot more blockchain bloat. And then these unpatched exploits also are currently allowing a lot of what we call UTXO bloat. So within a Bitcoin full node, there's two really critical pieces of memory. Everybody knows, I think, probably about computers, but you have random access memory. That's the memory that's live that the CPU can pull from immediately, get immediate access to. And that's what I'm talking here on this computer, all these applications I have currently open, my browser, this text editor, the video recording, all of these things, this is all accessing and running in RAM right now, right? Then I have a hard drive that if I wanted to go pull up my flight simulator game or some other game that's not currently open, that is currently sitting idle on long-term storage, but as soon as I open that game, it's going to be loaded into RAM, right? All right, so in a Bitcoin full node, there are two key things that we have to watch. Is how much RAM is being used, and these exploits increase the amount of RAM needed to maintain what's called the UTXO set, right? So the UTXO set is kept in memory. The resulting so if you do all the math of every wallet that's ever sent Bitcoin to every other wallet, what is the resulting value of every wallet known on the network? That's the UTXO set fundamentally, and that is kept in RAM, in memory. And then the op return, what gets recorded long term on the blockchain, right? So we have a record historically of these transactions in the blockchain so that you can build your current UTXO set. When you put a lot of excess data in those blocks, that also fills up. It makes it harder, not harder. It makes the base blockchain larger, right? So it makes the blockchain bloat, we'll call it, right? And what this does, this has two downstream effects. Blockchain bloat, it increases time time to sync a node, right? To sync a new node, right? So to be able to take a new node out of the box, load up, your Bitcoin software on it, and download from your peers the full blockchain. Takes a lot longer. The larger the actual data on chain, the longer it takes to download all that and validate all those transactions and sync a new node. A UTXO set bloat also makes it take longer to validate all those. The more teeny tiny little transactions you have to validate and then build a UTXO set for those wallets, those tiny dust transactions, that also increases block time. But then there's also the storage, right? So then the more you put on chain, the more you store data on chain, the more you have to have storage to store that. And everybody should want to run what's called an archival node. So yes, there's this concept of you can prune a node. You can say, okay, delete all the blocks prior to 1,000 blocks back. Prune all that back. Once I've done my once I've done the validation, I no longer need it. I have my current UTXO set, and I'm validating new blocks as they come in. I can prune old blocks. Yeah. So you can do that, but then you can't help bootstrap a new node. It means that if another new node comes to the network and they want to join the network, you cannot help them and get them online. So that is so fundamentally, if we have too many pruned nodes in the network, that also centralizes the network. We need to have a healthy number of archival nodes. So it is harder to maintain and run an archival node for a common pleb, which we want all plebs running full archival nodes if possible. The fewer archival nodes that are on the network, and the less healthy the network is, the more centralized the network is. And also the more RAM, the more general requirements, because the UTXO set is blowing open, all the bloat between the UTXO set and the blockchain, you have to have higher internet speeds. So it really, you just have to have a node with more RAM, higher internet speeds, and a bigger hard drive. As time goes on, that's going to get exponentially worse. And so only fewer and fewer plebs are going to realistically be able to run nodes as time goes on if we let these sorts of bloat happen. So BIP-110 was trying to patch, fundamentally it was a patch of these exploits, and it was just trying to limit op return to the same limit that had been enforced via mempool policy, for many years. Several versions of Core for many years have limited the size of op return. It wasn't done so at the consensus layer. It was done so via mempool filter policy, right? So we didn't allow the network to circulate large op returns, and that was effective. That was a super effective way of accomplishing that goal. And if you go back to the basic principles of what gives Bitcoin its value, this should be not contentious to limit there's no reason to have a very large op return that you can put, entire images or small videos or anything on the chain. There's no reason for that. If Bitcoin is the purpose of Bitcoin is a pure peer-to-peer electronic cash. I think that purely part's overlooked a lot. Again, a lot of people focus on this electronic cash. It needs to be pure, right? If it's not pure peer-to-peer network, then it loses its value. So this should have been a no-nonsense change, right? This shouldn't have been a big deal. All right,